Okay, we're back. Welcome to Mostly Hairless Apes, Season 7, Episode 2. I just did Science versus Religion. I think I finally have it figured out. We need a new belief system. We need to believe in science. We need to believe in reality. As weird as that seems, after teaching science for over 40 years, I have found that a lot of people don't believe in reality, as bizarre as that is. But when you believe in reality, you get down to some fundamental questions. Why are we here? What was there before the Big Bang? All these weird philosophy questions. But you need that. I've realized that one of the best explanations we have actually derives from physics, which oddly enough sounds close to philosophy, but it's fundamental. And that's the idea of getting down. I'm not going to go quarks and leptons and talk fundamental particles, but I do want to talk about the basic idea of philosophies. Why do we do things? What is it? How do you know what's good? How do you know what's evil? All of that stuff that religion has given us for millennia, literally for millennia, thousands of years. People have had these questions from when Og and Thuck were sitting around the campfire drinking fermented berry juice, and some wise elder said, "Shut the hell up. Would you guys go to sleep already?" Guys and gals talking about madness, whatever crazy stuff we come up with. And once we dawned consciousness, 50, 100,000, a million years ago, whenever it happened, we were able to have free will and self-awareness. And we've looked around the environment and we said, we figured stuff out. We figured out how to make tools, figured out how to stay alive, we figured out how to take over the planet. We figured out science and art, all sorts of amazing things, engineering. But it still boils down to the big questions. We all get a little existential when we go into those deep questions. A lot of people don't want to go there at all. They just accept they've been told. That's been the religions. That's been gods. That there must be somebody out there. The idea that we're alone is scary. And that it's a bottom-up view of the universe really is what I'm going to take. Because all the religions take a top-down view. They tell us that there's some magical entity out there, or more than one, or he, she, they, whoever they might be, and they're the ones who can tell us what's good and evil. And now, I want to say, if we take a bottom-up approach, if we use science, which has shown us so much about how the universe works, even though we've run into roadblocks. We're not going to get into dark matter and how much about the universe we know and dark energy. We look out into the galaxies and the universe around us. But at the very least, we should be able to do some math, do some calculations, look at this stuff and say, hey, let's wait a minute. Let's look at this stuff and think about it. And what would it boil down to? Well, physics tells us that ultimately it's entropy, that there's this thing called entropy. When we look at trying to do work, and this is probably a reflection of our consciousness, because work is goal-directed. The whole idea of doing some work is to get the job done. And the job has meaning. That's the whole point of work from a physics perspective. You're getting something done. You're accomplishing some goal. You're moving something. And you're moving it against entropy. That's the thing. We're resisting entropy. We're trying to direct some of the energy that would normally dissipate out into the universe and direct it to achieve some endpoint, some remanipulation of matter and energy. Because that's all life is. Life, according to the physicists and the biologists, when we get down to it, is we're resisting entropy. We are open thermodynamic systems. We can absorb energy from the environment. We can channel it into metabolic pathways. And we can do work. We can replicate ourselves. We can produce offspring. We can change the planet as we've done. But going back to the big picture questions, why should we do that? For the greater glory of God, some religious person might tell us. Or we can try to come up with our own ideas. I'm an American. I really like the idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's one of my favorites. And I think looking at those kinds of ideas, we can possibly be good without a God. And that's where I want to go today. I want to talk about good versus evil and think about what is it that makes our philosophy of life work. So, and then really, when you think about that, that we have words for that. We talk about morals, we talk about ethics. People get confused on those, but I think there's a really simple definition, which I think a lot of people would agree with, even the professionals, the philosophers, that ethics are social and morals are personal. And whether you agree with that or not, that's the definition I'm going to use today. And so we all develop our own morality over the course of our lifetime. It probably changes as we go, as we learn more things. How much do we know? What do we believe? That's the big issue. So we need some system to sort out all of this information. And luckily, math has provided us one. Claude Shannon started it with Bell Labs, trying to figure out telecommunications. And once we had computers and we had so much information, and they've developed a mathematical theory called information theory. And it's basically how can we measure information? How can we measure the content of information? How can we measure the transmission of information? The preservation of information. Because when you do the math in information theory, what you get to is information is the opposite of entropy. If the physicists are telling entropy is what kills us, that we eventually all run down, that we all decay into ashes to ashes, dust to dust, what's the opposite? What's staying alive? Staying alive is preserving some information, using that information to stay alive. And if you think about your life, the quality of your life may very well be proportional to the amount of information you have to work with and the quality of the information. What does the information tell you? And so here's my take. Here's how we're going to get a new ethical system. And what I'm going to do today is introduce that idea of ethics that we can do socially. I don't care what your morals are. Everybody's got their own morals. I think I'm fairly content with my life because I've come up with this ethical system, which oddly enough aligns with my moral system. Personally, I believe all this stuff that I'm about to tell you. And that's been really great. It makes me a happy guy. So what is that? So morally, let's start there. Let's start me on my journey. Because I was born, raised up as a Roman Catholic. I'm a recovering Catholic now, pretty much an atheist. I just don't think there's a personal deity out there. And I've been adopting, embracing atheism along the way. I was confronted with a question, as other atheists probably have been: how can you be good without a God? What's good if there's not somebody telling us what's good? Well, what is good? Life is good. I'm going to start there. I'm going to use that American ideal. And it works with the information theory, that if I'm keeping alive, I'm staying alive, I'm keeping others alive, I'm resisting entropy, I'm promoting life in the universe. Whatever else life is, that's as deep as I can go at the moment. That staying alive is an ultimate good. And can I build ethics and morals from that? Well, I'm going to stay alive. I've done my share of reproducing, and had some offspring, I have some grandkids, and taken in strays over the years, and just tried to help everybody get along. I think that's why I've been a teacher for so long, because the thing that helps you stay alive and gives you quality in life is if you know how stuff works, if you have more information. But nobody can have all complete information. That's where we run into problems. That's probably why we've evolved religions and belief, because we lack complete information. And so if we think about information is data. What is information? Here's my definition for information. Information is a code for a pattern of matter and energy in space and time. That sounds a little complicated, but it reduces us to fundamental physical concepts that the physicists are researching and the chemists for matter and energy and all of that fun stuff. But at the very least, we know that's part of the universe. We know that's reality. That there is matter, there is energy, there is space, there is time. Einstein told us space-time is relative, that they're actually part of the same thing, and that E equals mc squared, so we can convert matter and energy. And so while we're working on those puzzles, we're trying to get more information. And that's what science gives us. Science gives us information that we can test. That's the beautiful thing about science. And this is why science should be our primary tool to look at reality. Because by using the scientific method, by doing experiments, by looking for data and looking for verification external to our brains, because that's how we can avoid going down rabbit holes with all the philosophers. We can avoid the idea that oh, none of this is real, we're living in the matrix, whatever it is, or gods did it. No, if we just say there's matter and energy, space and time, we know there's life, we can look at each other and say, hey, there's reality. As far as I can tell, we've shaped matter and energy into our homes. If you look around your home, you're probably you're probably listening to this in some sort of manufactured setting, some artificial setting, something that humans have built over the ages. Might be a really old city, might be a new house, might be a tent, whatever it is, but it's how humans have altered the environment. And we do this by working, by channeling energy, reshaping matter in space and time. And if we have, whoever did something first had to figure it out. They used their imagination, they used their mind to solve these problems, to say, hey, how can I shelter myself from the elements? How can I get enough food to eat? How can I deal with those idiots over the hill, those other humans? And for thousands of years, we've organized into groups, and we used religions as a lot of our main core purposes to unify. That's what religion does. That's what belief does. Because information can only take us so far because we lack complete information. So we fill the gaps with belief. We make stuff up. We don't know what's out there. So we hypothesize. That's really all. I mean, that's what a hypothesis is in science. It's an educated guess. We take some of our knowledge, and that's going to be the avenue that we're going to crawl through. We're going to sneak through that little wormhole and figure out probabilistic ethics. And that's what I'm calling a new ethics for the 21st century that we can derive from biology. So what is probabilistic ethics? Well, it says you've got your morality. You might think life is important. You might think freedom, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is a really great idea. But whatever your personal morals are, ethics are what we can agree on as a group. That's the thing that makes reality. And that's why ethics is the place to focus when we're trying to organize society and make a better world. Because whatever people believe, we can only get along with what we can agree on. When we disagree, or we agree to disagree, however you work it, if we agree to disagree, then we might end up fighting. But if we can agree on something, if we both look at reality and say, yeah, that's how that works, then we can move forward with a lot more confidence, with a lot more comfort, with a lot more goodness, because we say, that's reality. That's what it is. All these other humans, they're actually conscious, sentient beings just like me, and they have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness too. That allows me to become a bit of a pacifist, because I don't want to kill other people unless they're threatening me. If they threaten me or mine, then yeah, I might have to kill them, and I'm okay with that. But wouldn't it be a better world if we could all get along? That's Rodney told us. That's one option. And if we could, how do we do that? Well, we have to have the same ethics. We have to have ethics that we can agree on. Even if we disagree on our morals, we have to agree on certain behaviors. So, what are probabilistic ethics? What is probability? Well, probability is chance. It's a matter. It's the odds of a situation. It's the odds of being correct. That's probability. It's based on knowledge. And now, all right, so think about this. So let's go back to the idea of information theory. And information is what our brains use to work. We process information. And biological systems use information as DNA. We have biochemical information. Information is stored in molecular sequences down inside of every cell and every living organism. As far as we can tell, on Earth, everybody's got DNA, down to the smallest bacteria. Viruses are another matter. We won't go there. But they use RNA or DNA, one or the other. But they use these nucleic acids, and all of their information is just a written out code. Strings of chemicals, 4 different chemicals, strung together in various sequences. And that gives us genetic information. That gives us the ability to stay alive, to grow and develop and reproduce. That's pretty amazing information. And that's been around for 3.5 billion years on Earth, as far as we can tell. But somewhere in the last million years or so, it could be shorter, it could be at least 50,000. That's when we started making art. So people have been thinking about stuff, and they're self-aware. And within that time frame, within this relatively brief time frame, we've evolved meta-information, the information in our brains, mental information. And so what good is that? Well, information in our brains, I think, can be subdivided into 2 categories. It can be divided into belief and knowledge. And belief is stuff that I hold in my head that I don't have any proof for. That's what makes it belief by definition. You got to have good definitions to develop ethics. You got to have hard, clear definitions. That's how we can make rules and laws that we can all live with. And that's why today is so confusing in America, probably elsewhere, because there aren't good rules. The freaking tax code is thousands of pages. What the hell? You either pay tax or you don't. I mean, come on. Let's get real here. It doesn't need to be that complicated. We just need some basic rules. And I've come up with 10 of them, which, like I said, we'll talk about in the next 10 episodes. But how do we get there? How do we justify making any sort of rules, or I call them suggestions, because I can't control you. You have to control you. And I want everybody to control themselves. That's what would make a really great world, is if we had a bunch of mature, responsible citizens in our society who all could follow the same rules. Then we could do a lot more things. We wouldn't, hopefully wouldn't be hurting each other. Hopefully we wouldn't be blowing each other up, stealing from each other. We'd all have enough stuff because we have ethics that say, let's take care of each other. If you think that's a good, but how do we get there? Well, sometimes we have to guess. We don't know. We know we have some good information. We have information about nutrition. We have information about education. We have information about health and medical care. And all of that information is knowledge because it's been verified. You give somebody injections, it's in a mental state. You repair a broken bone with a splint. We've got medical knowledge. And we have engineering knowledge, and we have math knowledge, and we have educational knowledge, and we have historical knowledge. And none of it's absolute. It's always dealing with partial doubt. But that's the probability. That's where we get to probabilistic ethics. If the two types of information that we're always dealing with are stuff that we can prove, knowledge, stuff that I can verify through scientific experiments or just observing nature or doing my own experiments or just reading and trusting, reading sources that I trust, all of that knowledge, which has hopefully been proven somewhere else. If it's not proven, it's not knowledge. If it's just belief, it's just stuff you make up, that's belief. And so probabilistic ethics just says, let's make decisions based on probability. How much do I know? How much don't I know? How ignorant am I of a situation? How much am I going to take a wild leap? That's the issue with probabilistic ethics. You make a decision based on the most amount of knowledge available and the least amount of belief. That's the essence of probabilistic ethics. You say, how much do we know about this? What information do we have to work with? Let's gather all the information we can. Let's organize it as best we can. Let's talk about it. Let's check all the resources we have available. And then we'll make a decision and act on it. And that's going to be hopefully accurate. It should steer us in a direction that lets us alter the world in a way that we think is good. And now what's going to be good, that's a separate question. I've got some rules, some ideas for that, like I said. But the process involves learning. The process involves talking to the experts, talking to the professionals. And that's what's going to happen with probabilistic ethics. If we were to build a civilization based on probabilistic ethics, we would defer to the professionals. We would ask the professionals who have specialized knowledge in some area, hey, what's the best answer for this problem? And then it's going to be up to the professionals to tell us what the limits of the knowledge are in that area. I don't know how quarks and leptons and all those fun things in physics work, gravity. I got some ideas. I've learned a few formulas. I know stuff falls down. But if I wanted to get into a lot of physics, I would talk to the physicist. And I'd say, hey, tell me what are these fundamental aspects of matter and energy? If I want to know how chemicals are going to react, how I can blow stuff up, I want to talk to the chemists. I'm going to ask, what kind of chemicals can I mix together to make explosives? What kind of chemicals can I use for insulation, to hold in heat or electricity? If I might want to know how medical stuff works, or animals or plant systems or microbes, I'm going to talk to a biologist. If I want to talk to somebody who's specialized in the human organism, the human animals, I'm going to talk to a physician. I'm going to talk to an educated professional who has accumulated as much knowledge as is available in a given discipline, in a given area of human knowledge, because that's where we are. We're in the information age. We've got information. We should be using it. But what that means, we have to trust authorities. We have to trust the professionals in a given field. And how can we do that? We can do that by frickin' reading a book. Fucking open a goddamn book and read it. God damn it. Go to school, learn things, and appreciate that you don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. Nobody has all the answers. Not the priests, not the scientists, nobody. But we do have a lot of answers. We do have a lot of good answers. We do know some things. And that's what we should be using to make our decisions, to reshape the world. That should be how we're making choices in life. Somebody wants to have a baby, but they don't have the income, then that's a stupid decision. That's a stupid decision, giving into animal libido and fucking with somebody and having a baby and then not being able to take care of it. Because if you're going to raise another human, you want that human to develop well, which means you need resources. And nobody owes you anything. That's the whole thing. If my genetic information is going to be passed on, I'm obligated, I have an obligation based on probabilistic ethics to say, all right, I got to take care of me and mine first. You got to take care of home first. That's one of the rules we'll get into. If you don't take care of yourself, how can you take care of anybody else? And if you don't optimize your knowledge, then you're operating from ignorance. Then you're operating from belief that somebody might have told you, but you don't have any proof for it. And if you don't have any proof for it, there's a lower probability that it's accurate. Because the stuff that has proof has a higher probability of being true. Yeah, scientists have made mistakes over the years, but eventually it wins out. If you've never published a peer-reviewed paper and just sent something to other people and let them look at it, when you create something, you've not got that feedback, you could be making all sorts of mistakes. But science works by redundancy. We keep repeating stuff, and it's fucking boring. I get it. But when you do things the same, when you see the same results, I believe the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and expect different results. If you've got a process worked out, let's use it. Let's figure out how stuff works. Nobody knows what an electron is, but we've worked with electrons now for over 100 years, and we've built global communication networks and power grids that empower the modern world because we know how electrons behave. Whatever the hell an electron is, we know how it works. And so we use that information, that knowledge, to construct computers and phones and satellites and power grids and all sorts of things. And it's really cool to have electricity. But I don't know what an electron is, and people talk about it. Nobody's ever seen one. But we know how it behaves. And that's the probability of saying, if I follow those rules, if I hook wires up in a certain way, the system should work. And if the system's not working, then I got to find the break in the system. I got to check my system. And that's what we pay professionals for. We pay an electrician to come out. We pay a plumber to come out and give us watertight seals on our pipes so we can flush waste to the waste management system. And we can get clean water into our system, into our houses. We want professionals. We need professionals. And we trust them. We trust them to do that work. And then we got to trust all of them. That's the whole thing. Up to the point where and any professional who tells you they know it all, like certain politicians, is so full of shit that's not worth talking about. Because if they don't know, if they haven't trained in that area, if they haven't read up in that area, why should I listen to them? They sound good. They make me think about a deity out there. Get over it. Just get over the baggage of belief. Minimize your beliefs. And that's the beauty of science as a belief system. Science just says, I'm going to trust what people can see. I'm going to trust what we can all see and sense about the environment and what makes sense, what's logically consistent. And when you do that, you can build more knowledge. You can find things out. You can figure out how stuff works. And if you use knowledge to make decisions, then you're going to have a higher probability of being right, of being able to change reality in the way that you want. Because that's all we do when we're talking about work and using and minimizing entropy within our systems and building more order and making better rules and suggestions about how we should behave. That's how we're going to build a better world. We're going to not believe that there's anybody else out there. It's scary. I know. It's kind of like turning into an adult. And you say, yeah, it'd be really great if some sugar daddy or sugar mama would step in and cover my ass. But there's no guarantees. I mean, if you can figure out how to manipulate somebody or let them manipulate you and they take care of you, great. But then you're really a child. You're really not a functioning adult professional. And that's what professionals do. That's what adults do. They take care of their own business. And they support themselves. A professional supports themselves in the economy. They follow certain rules because they know ethics are based in different societies. We have biological ethics, there's medical ethics, there's business ethics. Professionals in all of those businesses know what's the best operating procedures, what are the optimal systems to use. And at the edges of, and they also know where the boundaries are. They know where the edges of knowledge are. They know where they move into guesswork. And then that's a personal choice. That goes back to your morality and what you think is important and how you're going to do things. But as a society, all we should be doing is making our rules based on the most knowledge available. And bottom line with religion, we don't have any knowledge. We have years of history, but we don't have any proof. There's no freaking proof that any of these deities out there are listening to us, that they interfere with human activity. But we have plenty of proof that humans do that. And so what we need to do is change how people think. We need to change how we ethically have rules with each other and try to figure out what's the best way to do that. And I think that's probabilistic ethics. And when you have probabilistic ethics, you start by understanding your environment. You start by saying, hey, here's my worldview. Here's what I live in. And what I live in are these issues. I live in whatever world. I live in Western civilization, the weird world, if you follow that one. And then you have to come up with your own morality. Once you come up with your own morality, then you can do good. Because whatever you think is good might be different for somebody else, but we'll all know what you're doing. Because we can tell based on your behavior whether or not you're going to agree. Because we're all working in similar environments. We all have our own worldview. But once you know what's good, you can stand up for that. You can say, hey, this is important. I think the world should be this way. And that's what makes a good adult professional. Is somebody who's willing to stand up and say, hey, the probabilities are in my favor. I'm going to do good by standing up for something. Use the most knowledge available. Once I have that, I'm going to minimize my beliefs. I'm going to take care of home first. I'm going to take care of home and appreciate that there's different ways to look at the world. And I don't have all the information. A little humility goes a long way. Because when we're taking care of home and you look around and you see all the other homes and how other people live, and you might go, oh, those people are weird. But you don't know. You don't know what their life is until you walk a mile in their shoes. You don't freaking know a thing. So celebrate diversity. Appreciate that there's different ways that people look at stuff. And think about it. Think about the information you have. Think about the beliefs you have. Look inside. Look at the mirror. That's one of the hard things to do. Not just because I'm ugly, but because if you look in the mirror honestly and assess how much knowledge you have, what you think is good, then that's going to tell you what's going on in your home and why you should work with other people. And you should always question authority. You should question who's making the rules that you're living by. And are there better rules? And for Pete's sake, have some fun in the process. All right. So I just gave you the 10 suggestions from the Bible. And that's going to be my next podcast. I'm going to go ahead and bring that out. And hopefully I'll talk to you next time.